Alright, in the words of Marvin Gaye, let's get it on. This is Tales of Fairyland number 1 from February 1984. Reprinting stories from 1966 and 1967. I will be getting more specific than that, but we have a new cover for this package by Simon Waltonson. The artwork is good, but there's a few issues I have. Sir Anthony Hopkins is on the cover, and he is actually barely in this at all. And the other thing is that there is that big area where, very obviously, there should be some text. Some text declaring reprinting the classic Thor stories or whatever. There are a few other things I want or need to mention. First is that this came out the same month as Thor 340, and that issue ends with one of the villains from these stories returning to menace Thor. There was also a previous Tales of Fairyland in the 70s, 1970 or 1971, but that reprinted a different set of stories to this one. And the last thing, and this is the most disappointing thing, it's not on Baxter paper. Here are our credits, completely unnecessary since each part lists the credits. I suppose the editors wanted their moment in the sun. These are 5-page backup features from several issues of Thor that are by Stanley Lee and Jack Quimby. This first one comes from Thor 129 from 1966. It's also not a clean start because it continues on directly from the Tales of Fairyland in the issue previous, and we have Tom Hiddleston being sent off to the Fairyland prisons for one of his conniving plans. We have wonderful Jack Quimby artwork throughout, and Sir Anthony Hopkins is sending Thor on a quest to obtain a magical item called the Warlock's Eye. The problem is that it is currently in the possession of a barbarian warlord called Arukan, and here he is with his army conquering a village on the outskirts of Fairyland. Then we see him using the Warlock's Eye to help in his conquests. That is it, that is the first one. Over and done with. Now it's on to part 2. Thor is taking Legolas, Aragorn and Gimli with him on this mission, and this comes from Thor 130. This was a backup story in Thor 130. Thor and friends advance on the same settlement, and they oppose Arukan's armies. But one of the most important things here was that the Lord of the Rings 3, they were newish. They had been around for a few months, but I think it would be here where we finally got to start fleshing them out as characters and expanding on them and who they are. and really shown them as more than fairyland scenery. And then Thor defeats Aruken. And you might notice a big problem with this reprint. These stories were never meant to be digested this way. They were 5-page features tacked onto the end of an issue, but when you put them all together like this, the pacing is horrendous. It is the silly age though, so Thor is now disguising himself as and pretending to be Aruken, so that Aruken's servants will take him to the Warlock's Eye. Part 3 now, titled The Warlock's Eye. This originates from the next issue of Thor, Thor 131. Very iconic cover on that. Here is an example of the Lord of the Rings 3 stuff. We have a good comedy bit here with Gimli. He is hiding in a barrel, hiding away from the fighting. But then he does try to get out, and he finds out he is so fat that he has gotten stuck in the barrel. Then, on the next page, he defeats someone with his belly. From back there, I could see your belly. Gimli ends up getting the eye. And the whole Thor disguising himself as Aruken part is pointless. It doesn't go anywhere or accomplish anything. Another example of why these shouldn't be read this way. It doesn't feel as obviously go nowhere if you are waiting a month, or even just reading a bigger story in between them. Our next part repeats that feeling too, because this is almost an interlude. We are done with that quest in the Warlock's Eye. This comes from, naturally, Thor 132. I think they work as backup stories so well, because those issues of Thor had him not in fairyland. He was off in space. So fairyland-based backups were a clever idea. They have saved this village, so they celebrate. And this bit really reminds me of Lord of the Rings, the ring wraiths. We have the black stallion of doom, the dark horse of death. It appears to take a dying warrior to the afterlife. It's also an idea that I am pretty sure never appears again. Aruken is dying. It is there for Aruken, the horse. It's there for him. And Aruken has done a heel-faced turn and is now a noble warrior willing to peacefully surrender to his ends. Our next chapter is undoubtedly the best one here. And I don't think many people would be there to disagree that this is the prize piece among them. This is from Thor 133, the issue with Aaron, the Hungry Planet. It was a story that introduced him. What happens here is Cate Blanchett, she is in Lord of the Rings too. Cate Blanchett arrives. She has come to claim Aruken's soul. And we have a brilliant page here. Cate Blanchett this wasn't her first appearance either. She had appeared before this, but I would consider this an essential bit of character building for her. So Aruken dies and he rides off on the horse to Valhalla from Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin. And this whole thing is excellent world building. And in death, Aruken fights on in Valhalla as a hero. And then the others toast to the departed warrior who only a few pages ago they were fighting against. This is very much a jump. This is where a different story begins, really. The boys are heading back to Fairyland. And this is from Thor 134, which has the first appearance of the Eye Digivolutionary in its lead story. These stories just don't really work or fit this format. We have had 25 pages so far, and that sort of neatly lines up with the length of a regular comic, give or take, in this case take, a few pages. Then, this Fafnir story on the other hand, this is only 15 pages total. Not enough for an issue, but this story has a far cleaner start. This is what you want to ideally run, but it's not long enough. We have a lot with Gimli in this one. I want it on record, I think these stories are very good in their original format. They are still remarkable in this, but the seams begin to show a lot more with the writing and plotting. Here he is, Fafnir. Fafnir is a dragon, and Gimli has been tricked by him. Jack Quimby is wonderful at drawing Fafnir. Great Quimby monster art. It's time for the fiery breath of Fafnir. A good splash image here. This one appeared in Thor 135. We have got our heroes versus Fafnir. As I said, Fafnir was also appearing in the concurrent issues of the main series. Simon Waltonson brought him back, so this works as a good primer for that, and a good opportunity if, like me, you began with Simon Waltonson's run, and you want to jump back and see some odd Thor, some silly age Thor. Although in my case I didn't read this until much later after I finished Simon Waltonson's run. I never knew who Fafnir was. I thought he was just a random dragon that Thor fights. Well, that is what he is, more or less. But there is some backstory, and the character had prior appearances before Simon Waltonson's story. As they fight here is one of Sir Anthony Hopkins's short appearances in this comic. It's like when he won Best Actor for Silence of the Lambs, when he's only in 20 minutes of it. Right now, there shall come a miracle. So saith this final chapterette from Thor 136. Now, I have talked about Thor 136 before because there is an issue of What If that came from its main story. Anthony Hopkins, he is just watching his son in a life or death fight with a dragon, and he is doing nothing to try and stop it. I've not talked about the inking. Oh boy, take a gander at how our inker has handled Legolas in that top left panel, and a lack of backgrounds everywhere else. Thor, he buries Fafnir in the ground, and that is the way it's over. I don't recommend reading these stories pieced together like this. They feel both richer and more substantial when they are an additional complement to a larger, unrelated story. There's good stuff in them. There's good stuff in this. They are worth reading. But running through them like this was never intended to be how to experience them. Needs more Amanda the Enchanter, so 7 thumbs up.